What I wanted to talk about today was our story of implementing TRIRIGA at the University of Minnesota. If any of you remember this movie from the 1980s, The Never-Ending Story, it apparently involves sailing through the sky joyously on a magic flying puppy. That is not the story you are going to be here. Ours is much more of a different 1980s classic movie, Vacation, where just about anything that could go wrong did. So I think what I wanted to cover today was some of, not the entire journey, but some of the key lessons that we learned along the way that might be useful to your organization if you're embarking on this path. So University of Minnesota, I'm part of a group called Finance and Systems. We're a shared service organization that supports all of the campus operations groups. So facilities, construction, planning space, real estate, the auxiliaries, public safety, health and safety. And we provide finance, IT, we have a project management office that does continuous improvement projects for all those various groups. And then we have a group called Facilities Information Services, which does engineering records, enterprise GIS, our SAP business intelligence reporting system, and also operates our enterprise integrated workplace management system, which is TRIRIGA. This I like to include because it's a good reminder of what campus looks like when it's in good shape, because this is what most of our students experience most of the year, which is just a different view of campus. So just to set the context for the project and what we set out to do, we are 5 campuses spread across the state, 20 research and field stations. We have about 30 million gross square feet of space, 30,000 acres, over 1,000 leases. We have 900 buildings, and we have one of everything. We've got academic classrooms, labs, clinics, power plants, roads, bridges. We had a leased mine space for a while. We had our own train for a while, research boat. We've got about one of everything except a casino. So we run the gamut on the kinds of things that we needed our system to be able to operate. In short, I would say we're old, we're big, complex, geographically dispersed, and underfunded. So your ideal maintenance profile. What we have then is, kind of like I'm guessing most people here, starting in the 90s, we started to implement in a very organic way IT systems across the entire enterprise. So we had systems at department levels, we had systems at colleges levels, collegiate levels, specialized systems. None of them talked to each other. They were in various states of maintenance, upgrade. We had multiple instances of the same system on different campuses. And not only did none of them talk to each other, they would use entirely different nomenclatures. So you could have a parking lot that was called 3 different things by 3 different systems. The facilities people would have one set of numbers and IDs. The real estate people would call it something else. The parking people would have it called something else. So there wasn't even an ability really to map all these things together. So and this covered capital projects, our real estate systems, space systems, floor plans, GIS, and most urgently, the core system, which was our facilities management work order system, was about 20 years old at the time and was completely out of support and needed to be replaced. So that was sort of the prime driver for this, was that we had to do something. We also had at the time a legislative audit that said we needed to replace our maintenance management system, which was a helpful thing to have when it came time to arguing for a new system, an external group that said you really have to go do this. So we set out in a program that we called Enterprise Asset Management, which was always going to be more than just the software system. It was to be both a business process improvement activity, change how we do what we do, as well as implement a new software to support that. So we started out with an effort to map sort of a as-is to-be process, and we hired an external consultant that came in, and we spent about $1 million in a very, without referencing any particular software, very abstract, what is it that we do now, and how do we want to do things going forward in the future? And that seems like, on the surface, a very reasonable approach. I would say that the consultants advised us at that stage, dream big. Don't be limited by what the software can do. Think about what your best practices should be, how you want to do this, what the optimal world is, which is what we did. We spent a lot of money, countless staff hours, and I would say that was bad advice. So when we get to the key findings here at the end, that's one that I think we're going to come back to. So from there, we laid out what I would call a kind of 4 guiding parameters for how we approach this. And the first one was, we want one tool that can do everything. So the best of suite approach, which is kind of your Swiss Army knife. So instead of getting a can opener and a tweezers that you can actually use, you end up with a tiny little scissors and a tiny little tweezers. But we have one tool that can kind of do everything. Then we said, we're all going to get together, all our 5 campuses and our 20 research stations, and we're all going to hug. And we're going to all kumbaya and agree that we're all going to do it the exact same way in the exact same system, which meant that one little field station with, a couple of bathrooms and some cabins was going to operate the same way as the Twin Cities campus, which is one of the largest universities in the country. We're going to go completely out of the box. We're just going to buy a piece of software and use it the way it is. And we're going to do this as a cloud software as a service system. So that's what we're going to do. And you can see already how we're setting ourselves up for a bit of trouble as we move down the path. I mean, individually, they're all sort of best practice decisions, but when you add them all up, the effect of this is that we start to head down a path. So we get to the actual project itself, where we say, okay, we've got a project now, we've done all our business process mapping, and we are going to lay out a schedule. We're going to do this in 2 years. We are going to go live with all those Swiss Army knife tools at the same time. We're just going to implement them all in one big bang go live. And to make it easy, we're going to have a single point of accountability, and we are going to put out one RFP, and we're going to pick the software, the implementation partner, and the hosting partner as a package. So we get the whole package in one point, and we're going to do this for a 10-year agreement. So we get it all in, we're going to wrap it up, we're going to have one point of accountability, we're going to give them a long horizon to figure this out so they're invested. And that all sounds really good, except what we left ourselves with was 0 degrees of freedom on moving anything after we actually got into this effort and learned what was going to be involved in the process. So we get to the actual process, and at this point we have not yet picked a software. We haven't even looked at a software because we're being software agnostic from what we were advised by our implementation advisor. So we put out the RFP. Through this process, we pick TRIRIGA. We pick our implementation and hosting partner, and our hope for an out-of-the-box implementation. So we're doing real estate module, all the leases, all the land ownership, operations and maintenance, space management, capital projects, sustainability, which for us is a huge custom-built utility module. We build an entire, so we get into this, we realize out of the box isn't going to work. We've got all these these to-be processes, and we start to recreate everything that we used to have in our old system that we really liked, that we had built up over 20 years to work exactly the way we wanted it, because the organization didn't change. So we started to modify the software to fit the organization. So we have to build an entire finance bolt-on module. We completely customize capital projects to work for higher ed with all the ways we get different flavors of money, and we have to pay people and keep track of things. And what started out as a 24-month implementation becomes a 48-month implementation. We had originally planned for 5 integrations. That became 31 integrations. We had to build 82 data migration templates, and we moved 5 million rows of data out of old systems into the new system, and still had 5,000 hours of hand-entered manual data entry, where we hired students to just key data from the old system into the new system, because you couldn't actually get all these systems to automatically migrate the data. So the only way to get all that lease data from those 1,000 leases from the home-built 1985 system into the new system was to hand enter it. We built, customized a higher ed space module. We built out utility billing. We had to tweak inventory to make it work the way we wanted to. And at the same time, to replace all the stuff that our old system we had customized, we had to do a complete $1 million upgrade of our SAP BI intelligence reporting system. We implemented Kronos time and labor. We had to put in a new timekeeping system for the police department, because the police department used to do their payroll through the maintenance management system. So it just completely grew in scope. So this is where we get to the lessons learned, and I went through that kind of quickly because I think with a group this size it might be actually fun to do some questions. So I would say at the beginning, really think twice about doing that best in suite. I think with higher ed, it's really tough. A lot of these systems are built for corporate, and they work well for the way a corporation might approach facilities management, where you have a single building manager for the entire property, not where every department gets to make their own decisions about what they do in their space. I would say that for us, I'm not sure that we got all the benefits of putting everything in one system, and I really think that with capital projects, that we probably should have left capital projects out of the system and just focused on the real estate, the maintenance management, and the space management. I would say that one of the things that I would do differently is that I would pick each of those components, the software, the implementation partner, and your hosting partner. I would do those separately. The idea of having a single point of accountability and have one person one firm that really understands how it all works is good in theory, but after the fact, we have no visibility into a lot of what happens behind the curtain. And for a place that was used to having all the keys and we could open the hood and we knew how everything worked, not having any control of that has been a big challenge and a big change for the organization. So we lost a lot of control and visibility, and that's fine if it's like the Google suite where you just get Gmail and you get Gcalendar and you don't really care how it works behind the scenes. But for us, it was important to know how everything behind the scenes worked. I would say be prepared to match your business to the software as opposed to the software to the business. And that was probably one of the things that we really should have done earlier, was pick the software, then done the business processing, the business process to be function, to really rethink how those business processes aligned to the software, and then determined what elements of the software we were going to implement and which ones we would pass and find a best in breed versus a best in suite. In doing this, in the next two, kind of the big bang implementation and the system architect, we did not pay enough attention to the system architect. So a lot of firms, what we heard at the time, and this may have changed then, is that very few entities do what we did, which is all the modules at one time. People would tend to do the space and facilities, or they do space and capital projects, or space and real estate. When you did them all at one time, the scale of the project was we had a team working over here and a team working over here, and we would have application consultants doing module by module, but there wasn't anybody really watching how they all came together in a thoughtful, integrated way. So the way a role got defined in one module, it might be have thought of differently, just even within the same team as we were doing implementation. So that system architect is really important. The big bang implementation goes right along with it. We just made things difficult for ourselves by doing everything at once. Planning for integrations, we underestimated grossly the number of integrations we'd have to do to make all this work. And when I talk to our people in networking and OIT, our central IT group, they've said with software as a service, increasingly for them, they're hiring fewer and fewer developers and more integration specialists, and that's the trend from IT perspective, is that you buy the software, you use it the way you get it, and then you solve your challenges through integrations. And we had one integrations person who then left and got a higher paying job after he learned everything we did. So we were short on people and completely underestimated the number of integrations we need. And what saved us in the end was that we had a really big contingency going in. So we had a $14 million project budget to do all this, and of that $14 million, we had $6 million in unallocated contingency. Just figuring that we had no clue what we were doing, and we were gonna need it. And we came in under budget. I mean, 2 years extra work. We doubled our scope. We added 1,000 fields, but we still came in under our overall budget because we started with just a whopping big contingency, and that saved us. So, and then in the end, I just have to throw that in, our team, the people that actually did all the work at the TRIRIGA World Conference here in Austin, the team got an award for what they called the short-term journey. So I can't imagine if we were the short-term journey, who got the long-term journey award. But we were up there with people like the FBI and Amazon and McDonald's for just the scale and complexity of the integration of the project we put in. So that is, in 20 minutes, a very abbreviated version of a 7-year trip. So I don't know if people have questions or things you're interested in. Yeah.
How high was your turnover with the students implementing the data input? And did you guys have concerns over there being discrepancies between one student, inputting it versus another?
So the question was about student turnover. We were doing this during COVID, so we let them work from home. They could work from wherever. We had a good group of students that we brought in, some of whom their parents worked in facilities. So we sort of begged and borrowed and stole anybody we could get to help, and they were pretty good. I mean, we hung on to them, but we dribbled it out over quite a bit of time. So, and some was internal staff that just knew this stuff, and they, not all of it was students. Some of it was like the leasing specialist said, I know what I need and only I know it. So it took us a really long time to do it, but they did it all themselves, so they knew that it got in correctly. So it was a mix of students and staff in a variety of ways. So,
So I was involved in an SAP implementation at BU, and they had chosen SAP first, and then we custom everything we did in that view. We have to do it to this process is out of the box. A lot of people didn't like that process. So then when they went and started implementing the facilities and real estate systems, which the real estate system is still on the roadmap, still yet to be installed. The systems space planning went first. They chose a different project management system, and they're looking at work order now. They did it reverse, and then they said, no, we need to do the process first for these separate systems. So my question to you is, I guess my comment to you is that I think in both cases, people find something to complain about.
I can believe that.
I think what they learned in the second step was we're doing the process first, then selecting the system, but you may not get everything you want this time. And they were aware of that because they went through not getting anything they wanted in the SAP implementation.
I don't think there's a perfect way to do this, or some firm out there would be just rolling in the money, because I don't think I've come across anybody who's been just thrilled with their enterprise implementation. But for us, I think we set an expectation with this as is to be at the beginning, completely independent of what the software could do. That people set this idea of how we were going to do it, and then which was very much like the way we used to do it, and then we tried to make this tool do that. And that set us down a path that how you come out of the gate is really hard to change. And so those before you get to go decisions, I think have a disproportionate impact on just the whole course of the rest of the project. So I think I'm over my time.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Brian, so much for sharing this with us. And round of applause.